All right, here we are returning to the Tzurba Mirabonon. We're holding in volume 13, Shir 7 in this book, in this volume, dealing with Hilchot Pat HaBa'a Kisnin, bread that comes with Kisnin. We're going to have to see what this means. We started it last time, but we want to, as we're starting the new section again, just to keep everything in one kind of place. So we started off a little bit talking about brachot on page 259. We brought a Mishnah in brachot in chapter 6, which said, Keitzim mevarchen al perot. How do you make brachot on perot? Al perot ha'ilan omen bari pri'etz chutz min hayayim. Right, so everything gets a bari pri'etz on fruit trees except for wine, which comes from grapes, but gets a special din. Al hayayin omen bari pri'agef. It has a special status. It gets a bari priyagef and bal perot haaretz and fruit of the land, right? Bari priyadama, like on your watermelon and your melons. Chutz min hapat, except for bread. Bread is also a fruit of the land, wheat from the ground. Shala patu aimer hamotzi lechem min haaretz val hirakos, and on vegetables bari priyadama and Yehuda aimer bari minei deshaim. Right? That's Rabbi Yehuda wants to give a more specific bracha. So we see here that depending on what you're eating, there's different brachot. This is obviously what we all know. It's part of our avodat Hashem. This is the way we serve a Kadosh Baruch Hu, by saying different brachot. Right? It says the Rambam, when you eat bread, you have to say Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. It's a special, unique bracha, and a person needs to write chayv levarech. So every type of food has its bracha. Now we're going to come to what we're talking about. Pat HaBa'a b'kisnin. Okay, this is bread that comes as kisnin. Rav Steinsaltz, Zecher Tzadik Levracham, he wants to translate the word b'kisnin meaning desserts, dessert type of food. Pat HaBa'a b'kisnin. So let's look at the Gemara, Brachot Membet Amud Aleph, that says, Tanya Rav Moina Amrim Shum Yehuda, Pat HaBa'a b'kisnin, this bread that comes b'kisnin, mevarchen aleya hamotzi. You say on it, hamotzi. Amar Shmuel, and Shmuel said, halacha Rabbi Mona. The halacha is like Rabbi Mona, that you say, hamotzi lechem on hapat HaBa'a b'kisnin. So Amar Lehu, ein halacha Rabbi Mona. The halacha is not like Rabbi Mona. Itma Amar Leh. Bar ma the Amar Mishmei de Shmuel. Lachmaniot, these lachmiot marin behen. You can make an air with them. Mevarchen aleim hamotzi. You do make hamotzi in them. The Gemara says, Shani Hasan the kavod sudata alayhu. You know why you made it hamotzi on those hapata baba kisnin? Because you made a suuda on it. You made a seuda on it. We're going to have to define what this means. But if you're not eating it as a suda, again, we have to define what does it mean eating it as a suda. You're not going to make a hamotzi. You're going to make a different bracha. You're going to make the bracha of Borei Minei Mezonot. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Shani Elu, the Ein Derech Bnei Adam, L'Kvoa Sudatan Aleihim. The reason is because these things, Hapata Baba Kisnin, these type of breads that we're going to talk about, people usually don't eat them a lot. V'rak Oichlan Mi'at, they eat them a little bit. Derech Harai, not in a Suda type of manner. Therefore, we say Bori Minei Mezonot. And afterwards, bracha me'ein shalosh. Elim kein achal kashir kviat seudat the alvar chamotzi berkat hamazon da kolponim patu. Unless you eat a certain amount, which is a suda amount, then it's considered real bread, and you have to make hamotzi and say berkat hamazon. So this is what the Mishnah Berurah, Masechta Brachot. This is Rav Steinsaltz. Everyone is saying that these foods are foods that you do not eat as a meal. You're eating it arai, you're eating it as a temporary snack, and you eat a little bit of it. Okay? Therefore, their bracha is demoted from hamotzi and given to a borei minei mezonot. Now, the truth is, just to know for ourselves, borei minei mezonot is similar to the bracha of shehakol, right? What is shehakol ni'eh b'dvaro? What does that mean? Everything was created from Hashem's word, right? Shehakol ni'eh b'dvaro. What does borei minei mezonot mean? Borei, right? Created minei mezonot. Stuff that sustain us, that give us sustenance. I'm not talking about wheat. I'm talking about anything that gives you sustenance, it makes you full, that satisfies you. So truthfully, if you say mezonot on something that fills you up, you're okay, because that's what the bracha means, right? So it's a demoted bracha from Hamotzi. So wheat itself, if you're just eating wheat kernels, they're going to be hadama, eating wheat kernels. If you're making bread out of it, it's hamotzi. If you're eating it as a snack, right, a certain type of food, this hapata baba kisnin, it gets demoted to a mezonot. Now we have to define, what does it mean, hat haba kisnin? What is this word? Bread that comes the kisnin. Okay, so the first opinion that we're going to bring down is that brought of the Rabbeinu Yonah bringing the Rabbeinu Chanana. So let's take a look. We're on page 261. We are in page 261, source number 5. It says as follows: Rabbeinu Yonah, Perish Rabbeinu Chanano, the Chetzadik Ubracha, the Pata Babik Kisnin, Rotzano Lomar, Haba Bikisin. It's coming as pockets. Okay, it's a pocket food. She'osin min ha'isa kimo kiss. It's made in a dough into a pocket. Umachnisen bifnim shekedim bedvash umine mitika. You put in it walnuts, honey, and all sorts of sweet things. Okay, so this is the first opinion. This is a Rabbeinu Chananel. Hapata bava kisnin, this type of dough that becomes a mezonot level bracha, is a dough that is made into a pocket. You put something inside of it, and that is sweet things, and that becomes a mezonot. So I brought over here, I wanted to look in the Yalkut Yosef, where he brings from the Aruch, also bringing the Rabbeinu Chananel, that he says, Hapata bava kisnin, bread formed into pockets that are filled with sugar, almonds, nuts, or other spices. All right, Rabbeinu Yonah, Rashba, Ritva, this is how they explain from the Rabbeinu Chananel, Hapata bava kisnin. What about if I fill a pocket with meat or cheese? Is that still considered Hapata bava kisnin? Or is Hapata bava kisnin, as he said here, almonds, honey, and various sweets? So we're going to take a look in the Yalkut Yosef for a moment. We're looking at page 282, and he brings as follows. Let's read halachot. Pastries containing fillings required the blessing of Borei Minei Mezonot, but only if the filling was baked inside the pastry. Okay, number one, you made the pastry and the filling was there when you were baking it. If the filling was added after the dough was baked, let's say I made a dough, okay, and I made a pocket in the dough, and after it's cooked, now I go and I put the cream inside, or now I go and I put the sugar inside. No, he says that's the same as spreading peanut butter on a slice of bread. It's going to stay hamotzi. When we're saying you make a pocket, it must be baked with the pocket. It must be baked with the pocket. Otherwise, it's like spreading chocolate syrup on a slice of bread, and you have to recite hamotzi on it. So number one, when the Aruch said, when the Rabbeinu Yonah said that it's a pocket food, it has to be baked with the pocket. Now, number 16 halacha here in the Yalkut Yosef, baked goods made of plain bread, dough, right, filled with meat, fish, or cheese are not considered hapata bava kisnin. So if I get a, let's say, what do they sell those cheese burekas? Let's not use burekas. Cheese, what do they call it? Calzone, right? The calzone, right? The calzone might still be mizona for different reasons. But let's just say we have a regular dough and we stuff the dough with cheese inside and we bake it. Okay, according to the Yalkut Yosef, this is not hapata bava kisnin. This is not this this dessert type of food. Rather, this is a regular food, and you have to say hamotzi on it. Okay?
Even if it was baked together.
Even if it was baked together. Fish, meat, and cheese have a different status. It's not sweet. And the
Gosh Gajah.
right, so Gosh Gajah, in the simple understanding of it right now, we're using plain dough and we filled it with meat and we bake it. According to this opinion, right now, the way we're looking at it, it has to be hamotzi. It's hamotzi because it's meat inside. Baked good made of plain bread dough filled with meat, fish, or cheese are not HaBa'a b'kisnin. Therefore, regardless of how much or how little he's probably needs, one must first recite hamotzi because it's the only time that we say. Now, I'm not saying this is the din on Gosh Gajeh yet. Okay, there might be another reason why Gosh Gajeh would get a mezonot. But right now, if I took a regular plain piece of dough, I put meat inside it, and I bake it, that is going to be a hamotzi.
What do we say about the sweet right
So it's only sweets.
Makes it.
Okay, so here I go. I have one piece of dough, okay? This is the example. I have one piece of dough. I cut it into two. One dough I fill with meat, and one dough I fill with honey, sugar, and nuts. And then I bake them both. So what's the din of the one with meat? Malkiel, what's going to be the halacha on the one that I made with meat?
Hamotzi.
Motzi. And the one with nuts?
Mezonot, because it's sweet.
Perfect. That's the din. That's it. Because it's nuts, because it's sweet, it's going to be mezonot. When it's meat, cheese, or fish, it's a regular food. It's not a sweet thing. It's not a dessert. Therefore, it's going to be hamotzi. This is actually a machloket. This is a machloket. The Taz takes the other approach, and the Taz says that no, even if it's filled with meat, cheese, like you wanted to say, according to the Taz, even if it's filled with meat and cheese, it's still going to be mezonot if it's made in a pocket. But there are others who disagree with this. The Shnei Luchot Abrit, the Shla, the Magen Avraham, and the Yakut Yosef goes with this opinion of the Shla and the Magen Avraham, and he says that if it's filled with meat, cheese, or fish, it does not get the status of mezonot. It stays hamotzi. But if it's filled with sweetness, then it will get the status of mezonot. Okay, so that's a distinction. And for us Faradim who follow the Yakut Yosef, that is a distinction in halacha. So again, if the dough is filled with meat, cheese, or fish, and you bake it, it's hamotzi. If it's filled with sweets, it will be a mezonot. That is opinion number one. That is Rabbeinu Hinanel. This is what I mean, HaBa'a b'kisnin, with the word kis, meaning a pocket. Okay, now we're going to come to the second opinion. Now, this second opinion can make a lot more things mezonot, and that's why your Gosh Gajeh may still be mezonot according to this opinion of the Rambam. Because halacha, we hold of all three opinions. So we are now on page 261, on the bottom two, the Rambam. We are turning now to page 262. Let's read what the Rambam says. Okay, the Rambam says, "V'chein isa," and so to dough, shelasha b'dvash or b'shemen or b'chalav, if you knead it with honey, oil, or milk, or she'irabba minei tavlin ve'afa'a, or you mix it with a lot of spices and you bake it. The Rambam is very meduyak here. If you look at the Rambam, Rambam first talks about kneading the dough with something, and then he talks about mixing it with spices, not kneading. So we have to look at how that will play out in a minute. Vehi nikrat pata b'kisnin, and this is called HaBa'a b'kisnin. The Rambam says if the Rambam's not looking at the pocket. The Rambam's saying, what is the consistency of the dough? Does the dough have other ingredients that is not regular bread dough? Once it has other ingredients, then this is a pat of kisnin, because the consistency of the dough has changed. The composition of the dough is no longer bread and water, but it's mixed with other things. This is now considered a mezonot, unless you're eating a suda out of it, then it would be hamotzi. Now, how is he translating the word kis, b'kisnin? So he's saying over here it comes from the word kesisa, which means to snack on it. It's a snack. Chewed upon. There's something that you chew upon, something that you eat as a snack. It's called kesisa. This is a pataba b'kisnin. Okay? So the Rambam's idea is the dough is not bread and water, but it's mixed with something else. Okay? Now, the Rambam had two lashonot. Look at the Rambam again. The Rambam said, shalosha, you knead it into the dough, and irab, right? Or she'irab, the second line in the Rambam over there in source number 6. Irab means you mix it. So the Shulchan Aruch, Moran Bet Yosef, concluded as follows. It doesn't have to be actually be kneaded. But once fruit juices or spices are added to it, that the flavor is noticeable. Like the Maran Shulchan Aruch wanted to know why the Rambam had to say shalosha, that you knead it and you mix it, or you mix it. Once you tell me you add something to it, that's enough. So Maran Shulchan Aruch says, you know why Rambam gives you to knead it and to mix it? Is to tell you, the Rambam is saying that the bracha changes to Mezonot when the taste changes. Because what does it mean? You knead it in, and it gets inside of it. And you mix spices in it. How would you know spices are in your dough? You wouldn't know it until you taste it, right? If I put spices in the dough, you don't know it's there until you taste it. So Rambam means that it is noticeable in the taste. That's all you need. Not actually to knead it in, but rather to be noticeable. So look at the Bet Yosef, this is Rav Yosef Karo, and he writes, source number 7. Vehu sheyetam hata'aruvos nikar be'isa. The Rambam means that the flavor of the mixture is noticeable in the bread, in the dough. Dumya, that's why the dumya, it's like what the Rambam said, the irav ba minei tavlin, as you're mixing it with spices. Sheta'amam nikar be'isa, because they're going to be noticeable in the dough. But that nira ikar. And this is the most important part. So says the Rambam that it has to be noticeable. Once it's noticeable in the dough, that gets a mezonot.
Try first a little bit there.
So how does this play out with Gosh Gejet? How does this play out with Gosh Gejet? This is what Rabbi Tzion wanted to say last week. Your brother was trying to say last week. Before Pesach, he was saying.
The soul is kind of slaughter, bread.
So let's take a look. 1 second. Let's take a look at the Gosh Gejet for 1 second. And it's going to be an example. Pizza also all these things to be get mezonot because of this. Right now, it means that the dough gets the flavor, gets a flavor. So if you take the Gosh Gejet, right, and you open it up, and you take the dough and you try the dough, if the dough has a flavor to it, if it has a flavor to it, they'll get to the mezonot, according to this Rambam, right? Because the Rambam says if the dough is flavored, and it's a noticeable flavor, flavored dough, meaning it doesn't taste like bread dough. It tastes flavored. Then it becomes a mezonot. So the same thing with pizza. For example, if you have pizza and they put tomato sauce on it, and now if you feel the tomato sauce in the dough will now be mezonot. If that's the case. Usually you don't. But I'm saying if you did, you don't. I know you don't. But if you did, let's say they put a tomato sauce and they let it sit on top of the bread, on top of the dough for a while. They didn't put it in the oven right away. So now what happens? The dough is going to absorb the tomato, right? If that's the case, then because of that, it becomes mezonot. All right. We're going to deal with pizza in a moment because pizza might still be hamotzi. We'll have to take a look. But right now, I just wanted to give you the idea of the Rambam, the way we're looking at the Rambam. The Rambam's idea is if the dough becomes flavored, it's going to be mezonot. Doesn't have to be sweet. Has to be flavored. Has to have a he says over here, nikar be'isa. The mixture has to be noticeable. Even if you don't add, it could be anything. It could be, he says, what does he say? B'shemen, you mix it with oil. If you notice the oil, or b'challah with milk, you notice the milk. It doesn't have to be sweet. It has to be non-tasting like regular bread. That's what the Rambam says. And that's a different story. If it's already mixed with oil in the dough, so it's not regular bread dough, right? If you would bake it, it wouldn't taste like a regular bread. Then of course it'd be mezonot. That's not a question. We're talking about here, you put the meat on top of regular bread dough, and the meat juices go in the dough and flavors the dough. That would be considered mezonot according to the Rambam, according to the way we're learning the Rambam. Okay, so right now, Rambam said if the dough is mixed or kneaded with different things or mixed with spices, it becomes a mezonot. We said how much it has to be mixed? It has to be noticeable taste. That's the Beit Yosef. But that's not the way the Ashkenazim learn. Darchei Moshe, this is the Ramah. And he says, no. Al-Kernira, the story, the lo yotza miklal lechem b'mashir avoy tavon oshar mashkin mi'at. It doesn't leave the bread status just because you mixed it up. Elim kain ikar isa nilosh ba'otan dvarim. It has to be that the majority of the bread, majority of the ingredients used for the bread is these other things. That means you don't have much water, but you have a lot of fruit juice. You're not using water, but you're putting in a lot of spices or oils. The majority of the added ingredient makes it a mezonot. Okay? This is the way the Darchei Moshe learns this. Not by the taste, but rather by the majority ingredients. Okay, so this is what we have. We had Rabbeinu Chananel. This was HaBa'a Kisnin is a pocket, and we sold Machloket Magen Avraham and the Taz. We go like the Magen Avraham, that only sweet stuff in the pocket becomes mezonot. Meat, cheese, and fish stays Hamotzi. Then we dealt with the Rambam. The Rambam said the consistency of the dough, the composition of the dough changes. It's no longer flour and water, but it's mixed with other things. It becomes mezonot. How much mixed? According to Sfaradim, the Beit Yosef, Shulchan Aruch, noticeable in taste. According to Darchei Moshe, Ramah, the Ashkenazim, it has to be, the primaries ingredients has to be other things other than water. Okay, another definition of what it means, HaBa'a b'Kisnin. So this one is Reb Hai Gaon, and it's brought by the Aruch. Here we bring it from the Beit Yosef, b'Shem the Aruch, Parish Oy b'Shem Beinu Hai, HaBa'a b'Kisnin, Hem ke'achin v'hipat ben mitwelet uven she'enu mitwelet, she'osim otam ke'achin yevashim v'chosesin otam b'beit ha'mishteh v'shelo b'beit ha'mishteh. So he says, you know what this is? Dry biscuits. These are crispy things. So for us, very clearly, was to be non-toki. Right? You have non-toki at the parties. This is called a snack food. This is dry and crispy. And this is a HaBa'a b'Kisnin. And also constant loshon of kisisa, probably. It's something of a snack food, he says here. They eat them at parties and at home. And it's something they just stop eat as a snack. It's not a main meal. Therefore, it's a HaBa'a b'Kisnin. And therefore, it gets a mezonot. Okay, that's the I think the easiest of all explanations of what a HaBa'a b'Kisnin is. So now we have to look in the Yalkut Yosef on a few things. First thing we're going to look at is about this dry thing. So I'm going to look at page 291 of the Yalkut Yosef, and he says as follows. Bread dough that is baked to be dry and crispy like a cracker is a HaBa'a b'Kisnin, and it's mezonot. All types of crackers and hard pretzels. So hard pretzels, that's bread dough, that's made hard, mezonot. Now, remember last time we talked about I have extra bread at home. I don't want to throw it out. So I toast up the bread in the oven and I make it hard. Tzurba, or whatever they call them, right? Croutons. Do they lose their status of Hamotzi? Because now they're dry. So Malkiel says no. He's right. The correct blessing for toast made of ordinary bread are Hamotzi and Birkat Hamazon. although it has become hard and dry, toasted bread does not lose its original status. Therefore, it will stay hamotzi. But marketed toast, stuff they sell in the stores as toast bread, is initially made into toasted bread. Therefore, it is mezonot. Right? If the stores are selling toasted bread, they usually right away make it into hard bread. They don't make it soft and then hard. At home, that's what we do. So it stays hamotzi. But if it's made initially to be hard and crunchy and crispy, it will be mezonot. This now plays into right after Pesach. I have my matzah, right? I have my matzah. What's matzah? It's dry, it's crunchy, it's crispy. So what happens during the year? For us Sfaradim, we hold that it's going to be mezonot. It's going to be mezonot because it has the status of this HaBa'a kisnin.
Not flavorful.
Doesn't need to be flavorful. One opinion is as long as it's dry and crunchy, it's HaBa'a kisnin. These are three independent opinions. Whether it has to be a pocket, whether it has to be the dough consistency changes, or it has to be crunchy. No, either or. And it might be that Rav Hai Gaon is not arguing with Rabbeinu Chananu. Rabbeinu Chananu is not arguing with the Rambam, and none of them are arguing. It might be they're all moded to each other. They all accept each other's opinion. Therefore, the Shulchan Aruch says we hold of all three. One other thing I wanted to take a look at was pizza. Okay, so pizza is something that we eat pretty often. And the question is, what's the bracha on pizza? So, first of all,
From the crust.
first of all, 1 second. Does it when Rabbeinu Chananel said it has to be a pocket? Must it really be a pocket? Or can I make a dough and I can put on top of it sugar and honey? Just because it's not a pocket, it's not going to be a mezonot. Was he dafka has to be a pocket? So he says over here.
It must be baked together.
Right, it has to be baked together. So let's say I baked it together. So I took a dough and I put in it all sorts of sweet stuff and I baked it. But I didn't make it into a pocket. Was it dafka has to be in the pocket or not? So he says over here, it doesn't have to necessarily be in a pocket. That was just the way that usually was done. It was done in a pocket. But it doesn't have to be in the pocket. Even if it's flat and it has sugar on it and honey on it, it's going to still be mezonot. Okay? Okay, so now, pizza. Let's take a look at pizza.
If it was added to the dough, we're talking about, right?
Right. So you have
It was
the dough.
added to now to the
No,
bread
not
that
to
was
the dough,
already
not
made,
added
and
to the
then
dough.
they add some, and then again they put it in the oven. So
No,
not
I
in
have
that
a dough. I made a dough.
Right.
And now I'm putting dates, honey, sugar, sweet stuff. And I don't roll it up. It's not in a pocket form. And I throw it into the oven and I bake it. Now I take it out.
Sounds like the same, yeah, like
The
Rabbeinu
first
Hanano.
opinion.
Yeah?
Rabbeinu Hanano,
Right.
right? And it's fine. He just said it's a kiss. Usually it's done in a pocket form, but it doesn't necessarily have to be in a pocket form. Lav daf. Okay, what about pizza? According to this, says the Yalkut Yosef, the correct blessing for pizza is Hamotzi in Birkat Hamazon. Why? Since it's made of plain bread dough, topped with pizza sauce, tomato, cheese, and spices. Okay, so it's topped with it. And we just said that fish, cheese, and meat, it's Hamotzi. Doesn't become a mezonot. So same thing for pizza. Now, if the dough is kneaded with milk and butter, and the flavor is noticeable, then that's the Rambam, right? If the dough flavor of the pizza tastes not like regular dough, which some pizzas are like that, they have like a flavor to the dough. So then it's mezonot. If it's kneaded with water and milk, and the milk is not noticeable, then it'll still be hamotzi in Birkat Hamazon.
It's hard to tell because you feel the cheese. It's hard to tell what the bread is actually.
Sometimes
It
from the
overrides
crust you can tell. Sometimes from the crust you can tell.
the outer crust,
Yeah,
the part where we have to bite first.
you can try a little bit. You can try the crust, and if the crust is the flavor is noticeable, then the pizza would be mezonot. If the flavor is not noticeable, right, and it's regular bread dough, then the pizza is hamotzi.
So it sounds like most cases hamotzi. Not
Yeah.
much of most pizza place.
Yeah, it seems to be that way, right? It seems to be that way. Okay, right. It's not imperative for the filling to be enveloped in the dough. Even the filling is laid on top of the dough, it's still be considered a pata baba kisnin and will be mezonot. So the Or L'Tzion says sometimes the pizza dough absorbs the tomato sauce, and if it absorbs the tomato sauce, then it will become mezonot. But we're saying most of our pizzas do not absorb the tomato sauce. There's no tomato sauce in the dough, so then it cannot be. So Maran L'Tzion ruled that the proper blessing for pizza is almost always hamotzi. Right? Hamavaji ruled that pizza is almost always hamotzi because most of the times the dough is not a flavored dough; it's a regular bread dough, and the topping is cheese and tomatoes, which will remain on hamotzi. Because it's chash of the Turei Zahav. Remember, the Taz said that no, even if it's filled with meat, cheese, it's still considered mizonot. That was the Taz. We don't paskin like the Taz. We go like the Magen Avraham, that if it's filled with meat, cheese, or fish, it's going to become hamotzi. It's not going to be stay mizonot. So because he was worried for this, he would wash on regular bread, make a hamotzi, and then he would eat the pizza afterwards. And someone who had Yer Shemayim, they say this is what he would do. But halachically, we've just noticed that pizza, majority of the time, is hamotzi. Okay, so this is the same idea with Gosh Gajeh that we mentioned a couple of weeks ago, and Ritzion was correct in saying that if the dough gets flavored from the meats, then that will change its status to mezonot. Okay, if the dough gets flavored from the meats, then it changes to mezonot. So this is a very important distinction. Okay, to understand this.
Who says this? Rab Zion Abashaul?
The what?
Who
The
says
absorption of the
flavor?
meat.
The meat, yeah, the meat is is absorbed into the dough.
The Or L'Tzion says this, but it's not just the Or L'Tzion. This is a simple way of understanding the Rambam. The way the Beit Yosef understands the Rambam is that it says that it has to be ikar, has to be nicker, has to be recognizable in the dough. You don't have to necessarily knead it into the dough. It has to be nicker into the dough because spices don't get kneaded; they're just placed on the dough. So therefore, it will turn into mezonot if the dough is flavor. All right. So now you have the food in front of you. You're not sure mezonot, hamotzi. Very simple. Is it flavored dough or not? If the dough is flavored, it's mezonot. Any flavor, not necessarily sweet, just that it doesn't taste like regular bread dough. Become mezonot. If it tastes like regular bread dough, it's going to be hamotzi. For the pockets, the way we're learning, like the Magen Avraham, the way Yaakov Yosef learns, if it's a pocket food, bread that's made into a pocket of the filling inside, it's only mezonot if it's a sweet filling. Sweet, dessert-like. But if it's mixed, if it's filled with meat, cheese, or fish, then it will still be hamotzi. Okay? Flavors for the dough's consistency. Pockets become hamotzi, become mezonot, even if the dough is not flavored. So now the question is, if Gosh Gajeh is just the pocket, right? But the dough still tastes like bread, then it will be hamotzi. Because I'm using another opinion to get the mezonot. You have to remember all the opinions.
Eating goshgija cold, then you don't feel the flavors in the dough.
And then it's not considered flavored dough. Flavored dough, the dough itself has to be tasting different, even anytime you eat it. If its dough is flavored, if I put a flavor into the dough, will I be able to taste it? If I put honey into my dough, will I be able to taste it when it's hot and cold? Okay, so same thing with this. You have to be able to taste it when it's hot and cold. If you're telling me now that it's hot, now it goes into, it has to be, the dough is flavored. The dough is flavored. You have to tell me that the dough is flavored. You tell me the dough is flavored, it's Mezonot. You tell me the dough is not flavored, it's Hamotzi.
So what's with some people that say one slice is Mezonot and 2 slices Hamotzi? And
so probably what they're going on is they're saying that it is a Mezonot, it is a Pata Baba Kisnin, and it is Mezonot, but if you're Kuveya Seuda, right, if you're eating 216 grams of it, then it'll definitely become Hamotzi. That's the opinion they're going with, right? It depends how much pizza you eat, because if you eat enough dough, it'll become a Hamotzi. Eat 216 grams of this, it'll definitely become Hamotzi.
Ashkenazim also follow these 3 opinions?
Yes. Their only difference in these 3 opinions is the taste, right? The Rambam says, the way Yosef learns, you have to be able to taste it. The Ramah says, not that you have to taste it, but you rather have to use a majority ingredient different than bread and flour and water. If 75% is fruit juice, then it changes its status. Nothing to do with taste. Okay? We'll see how that plays out in a minute.
There's no meat, but it's a mushroom or pumpkin vegetable.
Vegetable is the same status as meat. It'll still be hamotzi. It's only if it's sweet things. Sweet as in dessert sweet.
Pumpkin made it sweet.
Dessert sweet. If you're saying it's a dessert, then maybe you can say it's a mezonot. But I'm not certain that it's a dessert because they would put it out on the table early in the Suudah, right? So it's not a dessert status. Usually you don't put out dessert, you don't put out cake in the middle. Okay, so I don't know. I think the easiest way to get out of these goshgija things is if you put a flavor in the dough. Once you put a flavor in the dough, it's definitely mezonot for us. Okay, now, so Ephraim, you said you have to go each and every opinion. So that's what the Beit Yosef says. Source 10 on page 264. We're going to be makel according to all opinions. Whether you're filling it up in a pocket with honey and almonds, rosh kilash, the il chashab. I don't know what these things are, but some sort of desserts in the Beit Yosef's days. All right. Whether you mix the dough with some sort of flavors. Kulan din pasta babakistin yesh lohem. I don't know. Maybe, I'm not sure. Possibly din pata babakistin yesh lohem. Very varchlei Hamotzi. So shivachas elim can't kavoi suda. So I love unless you make a suda on it. Or achal shir shir when adam the kavoi love. You eat what people eat to make a suda on it. So Beit Yosef says they all have the status. Okay, the crispy, the filled dough, the mixed dough, all of them get the status of a pata bava kistin. So we go according to all 3 opinions. Now he said his lashon, it's lahakel, it's a kula that we do this. Says the Bayit Chadash, says the Bach. What do you mean, a kula? What's the bracha? If the bracha is a bracha, then don't change the bracha. You have to know what the bracha is. Don't tell me it's a leniency. If it's supposed to be hamotzi, make hamotzi on it. Don't tell me it's a leniency and make mezonot. So says the Drisha, he says, you know what it means? That he means it's lahakel. Because bari mini mezonot is like brachat shahakol. Mezonot means I get filled. I'm filled with food. So it can work on a lot of things. And we know, lahalacha, if someone said me'en shalosh, according to some opinions in the Rishonim, that's enough for Birkat Hamazon. So we're allowing you to say mezonot and say me'en shalosh afterwards. That's somewhat of a kula, but it's not like we're saying this is not the right bracha and do it. It's the bracha, but it's a kula because mezonot is a covering all bracha like shahakol, and you're able to use me'en shalosh afterwards. Shulchan Aruch, source 13. Pat Baba Kisnin. Aleph. Yesh Farshim. Pat Asui Kimin Kisim. And you make it in a pocket. We said lav dafka a pocket. Rather, Shememela Moita Devasha Sukar Vegoizim Bishkedim Vitavlin. You mix it with spices, sugar, walnuts, almonds, something sweet, dessert-like, and it becomes mezonot. V'yesh Rimshi Isa She'ira Devash or Shemen or Chalav or Mine Tavlin. Ve'efon, you bake it. Hushi Tam Tarubas Hamei Peres or Tavlin Nikar Beisa. That's what Shulchan Aruch's psak is, that as long as it's noticeable in the dough. And the Ramaz says V'yesharim Shazen Nikra Pas Gomer, and can yesh b'em harba tavlin, unless there are a lot of spice. Odvash Kamina Matika Shekarman Lekach. Lekach is a honey cake that the Ashkenazim have. Shekamat Hadvash Tavlin came Ikar. That's the main thing. B'chena Nohagim. So the Ramah, right? The Ramah is of his opinion. Primary ingredient must be something else other than water and flour. The yesh b'farshim shehu pat bein mituvelas bein she'en mituvelas, whether it's flavored or unflavored. Shosim otam ka'avim yivashim dechosesin otam. And dried biscuits, non toki. It's made something dry. It's a toast. It's made initially as a toast, not that you made bread and then you turned it into a toast. We saw that stays as a motzi. Valacha k'divrei kulam. Valacha is like all of them. All of these are considered a pat haba bekisnin. And he brings over here the Bir Halacha, who says from Akiva Eger, why Shulchan Aruch is not right that a God-fearing person should act in a way to satisfy all opinions. Meaning you only make a mezonot if you have all three opinions. Why doesn't he say to do this? So he says the that each one is actually agreeing to the other. That all these three opinions are not arguing with each other, but rather each one agrees to each other's opinions. And therefore all three is considered hataba b'kisnin. Says the Yalkut Yosef, source 15, hataba b'kisnin, mevarach ala bari min mezonot, ulachara baruch me'achad mein shalosh, which means alamichya, upataba b'kisnin hu. I'll call Elo mevarach bari min mezonot, lachreim alamichya. The im kovea suda to alehem, and if you're kovea suda on them, what does that mean? Kovea suda. From Sion asked this question on Pesach. What is kovea suda? We're going to get into this soon. He's going to go into this. For Spartim, it's very simple. The Haim Sha'ochel 260 gram vayoter, 260 grams. So that's four beitzas, right? That's 260 grams. No till yadav. You wash your hands. And Yaakov Yosef says you could even say Netilat Yadayim on it.
About 216 grams.
Okay, so what does it come out when you're eating it? You have to know what you're eating.
About 454 is 1 pound, right? No, so more. Sorry, less. So about 3/4 of this cup is about.
But it has to be full. So if you're eating something flat, you don't know how much you have to fill. You have to measure it. How much is a slice of pizza? How many grams of bread is it?
So that's 150.
150 grams of bread per slice. So that's the Ashkenazic opinion. If you eat two, you can make you make a hamotzi. No, we're saying if the pizza dough is unflavored, that's what we were doing before. If it's unflavored, it's hamotzi from the start. Right? Nothing to do with kaveh suda. It's an unflavored pizza dough. It's a hamotzi.
How much do you have to have?
How much you have to eat regularly to make Birkat Hamazon? That's it. It's a hamotzi and Birkat Hamazon. If it's unflavored pizza dough, it's going to be hamotzi. That's it.
So one slice is enough.
Sauce and cheese. Yaakov Yosef passes like the Magen Avraham that stays hamotzi. It's only if it's filled or topped with sweetness changes to mezonot. Okay, sweetness, right?
Is that the opposite of meaning? Now that it's flavored with spices also?
What's flavored?
Bread.
If the bread is flavored, it's mezonot.
Gujay is not flavored. We agree. The dough is not used. We don't put anything.
You don't have to mix it into the dough. If the dough is now flavored and I'm eating it, the dough tastes flavored.
Yes,
it's mezonot.
It's the same thing with pizza.
If it is, that's the case. But if it's not, it's not. Most times,
Pizza is once you eat it, you don't eat it.
No, not if you eat it. The dough itself has to be unflavored. It has to be flavored.
You take the pizza itself.
If you take the crust, right? The crust usually doesn't.
Only.
Yeah.
Maybe then.
So that's how you know what the bread is.
No, but you don't eat it. Nobody eats the crust only.
But that's what it is. Okay, so if you remove the cheese and everything on top and then eat the bread, what does that bread taste like?
It will have the flavor.
If it has the flavor, then it will be mezonot. But that's not what he says here. Chacham Uvaji actually asking on pizza, saying the correct blessing for pizza is hamotzi. Moran Shiontion ruled that the proper blessing for pizza is always hamotzi, because he says that the bread is not absorbing the flavor. Okay. If the dough is flavored.
The dough is flavored by position.
If the dough is flavored by the meat fats, that now if you taste the dough, it tastes flavored, it's mezonot. If that's the case, he's saying that it's not the case. We're arguing with the technicality. As long as we know how to view it, you're fine. Okay. Anyway, the Heinish Alcha 260 gram vayoter, and it's going to be 216 grams of that bread, of that mezonot. Not that I'm eating other things. So it has to be, the actual dough has to be eaten. Okay, so this is the three categories of a HaBa'a kisnin. This is how we deal with them. Malkiel, yes.
What about French toast? Just want to clear up on that.
French toast is already different. French toast is already different. It's a whole different thing that's going on there, because we're taking the dough, was already made, and now we're making it into something else, right? So if it's less than kazayit pieces, it'll go down to mezonot. If it's kazayit pieces or more, it'll stay a hamotzi. We'll deal with that at a separate time. Now, what we're going to getting into is two issues. We're going to be a big difference between Sephardim and Ashkenazim. When it comes, yes, Avram.
Quick question. How, like, those Eggos, those Lego Eggos, like, what are those, Eggos? Eggos, yeah, waffles, whatever. They're
yeah. Well, they're very different. They're flavored. They're flavored from the start.
So waffles also flavored. It's
they
sweet.
Have oils in them. The Eggos are waffles. Waffles.
So
waffles are flavored. They're not regular bread though.
So is waffles. Waffles is also sweet.
Yeah, it's gonna be mezonot unless you kaveh suda on them, which means 216 grams or more. Then you'll have to make a hamotzi on them.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, those are definitely a HaBa'a kisnin. They're definitely flavored. Okay, now we're going to be dealing with two issues that are different between Sephardim and Ashkenazim, because this is going to deal with that Rambam. Remember what the Rambam said. Pancakes is always going to be mezonot. If it's a batter is thin, it's a whole different din. The batter is thin. Thin batter is not bread batter. It's different. Don't mix pancakes. We'll deal with pancakes different. I remember it's also fried, but it's also a thin batter, so never even get to the status of. I remember I was in Camp Roshraga, and someone asked Rabbi Label Katz, it's a big question by the Litvaks. They asked him about this fake suda on pancakes. He says it's always mezonot. Don't ask questions. It's always mezonot. The batter will never get. It's not a bread batter. Anyway, yeah, it's a liquid pancake. Right? How do you make it? It's a liquid. It's very thin. It's a different story. Maybe one day we'll get into it. Now I just want to deal with what we're dealing with. Let's focus on point. You're learning halacha, focus on point. Number one, Rambam said if it's mixed into the dough of flavor, it becomes mezonot. How much has to be mixed? This is the machloket, Bet Yosef and Darchei Moshe, Ramah and the Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch said, I have to be nicker. I have to be able to taste it. Once I taste it, it's good. It's going to be mezonot. The Ramah said, not necessarily true. It has to be a primary component. I have to use more fruit juice or more spices than other things. So now it comes to two things that we see in the markets. Okay, you go to the Ashkenazic stores and they're selling bread for Shabbat, and it says sweet challah, and it tastes sweet. Can you make a hamotzi on that? It's noticeably sweet. No. Or you have another opinion. You have another problem in the markets. You have bread that's sold and it says, I love that the factories and the companies become poskim, right? They say Mezonot bread, right? Mezonot bread, right? How are they coming to Mezonot bread on this? We're going to go through it step by step. But think about it for a second. They're using the Ramah. The Ramah said that as long as you using a primary component other than water, it's Mezonot. He's not talking about taste. As long as the primary component is something else other than water. So if I use enough apple juice, right? 75% apple juice, but somehow with everything else that I'm using, it still tastes like bread and not sweet. According to this opinion of the way of viewing this Ramah, which is actually Machlokas Ashkenazic poskim, as we shall see, it can either be Mezonot, according to those poskim, we say as long as the primary component is not water, right? It will be Mezonot. But according to Svardim again, we go very pashut. If it tastes sweet, it's Mezonot. If it tastes unsweet, I don't care how much apple juice you use in it, it's going to be Hamotzi. That's in the Seif HaDavar, but we'll go through it.
According to the Rama, in regards to the challah that's made with apple juice,
Yeah.
It has to be, according to the Rama, 75%. It could be even 2%. Once it says apple juice,
No, according to the Ramah, it has to be a primary component.
oh, it's 51%.
It has to, yeah. It'll have to be. Yeah. I'm not sure the 51, but it has to be primary. No, it has,
It says apple juice,
No.
it knocks it down.
no, it has to be a primary component. That's what he said. If you want to look at his lashon again, it has to be the ikar, the dough has to be mixed with those things. Has to be a primary component. Okay, so now let's take a look at these different things. I don't think, in my opinion, I don't think that Tzurba does the greatest job with this two topics here. But let's take a look. Sweet bread. Okay, so he has here from Rav Dov Lior. He's assuming a chief rabbi of Chevron and Kiryat Arba, former chief rabbi. So let's take it. So Mizrachi, let's take a look. Regarding sweetened rolls upon whose packaging is written, their bracha is bari minei mezonot. What is their real bracha? So he answers, regarding bread roll, which are commonly accepted in the country of Israel today, which have small quantity of sugar in the dough, it appears that these are categorically bread. They're just like sweetened loaves of challah for Shabbat, about which we have never heard that anyone would say that a person should recite bari minei mezonot. Okay, so he says sweetened rolls are hamotzi, right? And this is going like the Ramah, right? Because the Ramah said, I don't care about the way it tastes. What's the primary component? So if it has a small quantity of sugar in the dough, it's going to be hamotzi. Then they bring here from Shilas Tshuva of Bahola Shel Torah. This is another Mizrachi rabbi, Rav Yaakov Ariel, and he says these doughs, sweetened bread rolls, are not exempt from Netilat Yadayim B'Kat HaMazon, unless someone is eating a small size of it. What she's saying is she'ein darkish me'adam l'svoa mimena, to get satisfied from it. So this is another whole deal, a din of Kvei Suda. He's saying if you get satisfied, then definitely be hamotzi. If not. But again, he's saying the same, that sweetened dough is hamotzi. Says the halacha brura. So now comes Chacham Harav David Yosef, and he writes as follows. And this is for us, final line on sweet bread. Let's take a look. Which are sweet. Even though the majority of it is water. But you're able to taste the flavor. Right? Not a small amount, but rather if you eat 216 grams, it becomes now hamotzi. Right? Other than that, it's always going to be mezonot. Sweetened. Once you can taste the sweetness, once you can taste the flavor, not necessarily sweetness, flavor. Here he's talking about sweet challah. But as long as you can taste it, it's mezonot. The minhag Ashkenazim is different. He says you should eat a menta suda. Because according to the Ramah, what's the primary ingredient? I don't care how it tastes, the Ramah says. What's the primary ingredient? If the primary min hasafek. Always eat in the middle of the suda. It's easier. You get out of the safek. But anyway, this is the din lalach l'maisa. It's very simple to Sephardim. Taste the bread. Sweet, mezonot. Not sweet, hamotzi. That's it. I don't care what it's made out of. I don't care what you put in it. That's it. Same thing with egg challah. I don't care if the egg's in there. Can I taste the egg challah? Does it not taste like bread anymore? Does not taste like regular bread? Then it's going to be mezonot. If it tastes like regular bread, it's hamotzi. Challah.
She does put a little bit of sugar in.
Yeah.
That's just,
Do you taste it afterwards?
I want to say. That's just to undo the yeast.
Right.
So it's very salty.
You're balancing the flavors.
Exactly. So it's not really that it's sweet because it's sweet.
That's right.
A little bit. It's a draft.
If the sugar is in there, it's not necessarily mezonot, unless it is a recognizable sweet taste.
So I would say, I do have in the store a company called Zadie's.
Zadie's?
Zadie's, I don't know if you
Okay, no, never heard of it.
You should try it once. This is mamish cake. It looks like challah rolls,
And
challah.
it's sweet.
And I'm telling you, you eat this. That's what I make. I 100% is when I tell all my guys, you make hamotzi on it, no problem. Ashkenazi, no problem. But I 100%. This is cake, mamish cake. So this I can understand, but regularly I bring, let's say, challah rolls from the bakery,
Right.
and people are telling me no, it's sweet. So I don't know how to balance it. That should be nuts. They put a little bit sugar into it, make it a little bit balance it. So where is the fine line? So to him, no, he tells me this is too sweet, and to this guy, no, it's not too sweet. So I'm like,
It has to be
I'm
nicker,
you know.
meaning in this case, if you're saying some saying it's not sweet, then it's not nicker, and it's not recognizable.
Oh, so but I have those that are saying that are critics. They tell me, no, this is sweet. Why you bring this?
How do they know it's sweet? What are they saying it's sweet? They taste the sweetness?
Freak out. To me, freak out. I'm like, listen, if it's nicker to you, 216 grams. What should I tell him? I don't know what to tell him.
I think it's
What do you feel?
right. So I had that one time that I was eating here, and someone came and said it tasted sweet. I said I just tasted it. It doesn't taste sweet to me.
See, that's exactly what I'm
So
saying.
I told you, you can rely on my taste. That's it. It's not nicker.
Sometimes they add a little bit.
Egg challah rolls. If the egg challah rolls does not taste different than regular challah rolls, then you can make a hamotzi of it. If it tastes sweet, then you can't make a hamotzi. That's it. It's that simple. Bring your own bread. That's what he says over here. That's it. Here, if a Sephardic Jew is a guest of an Ashkenazic Jew and they are served sweetened challah, he must recite the blessing bar Mezonot. If it is Shabbat, the guest should bring his own challah to his host's home in order to fulfill the mitzvah of eating genuine meals on Shabbat with Hamotzi. This is like Gach Katubi, Al Kut Yosef. He says, bring your own bread with you.
And how much of an egg challah one has to eat? How much challah do you have to
216
eat
grams.
in order to fulfill hamotzi with the egg challah?
216 grams.
So how many would that be with the regular?
You
challah?
have to
4?
check. I don't know. Every challah roll is different. 216 grams becomes a kvesut if it becomes a hamotzi. Okay. Now the flip side. So we have those packaging breads that say, you taste it, and it tastes like bread. There's no sweetness in them. It tastes like bread. Yeah. You're a guest in Ashkenazi home and they give you egg challahs. If you want to make a motzi, you have to eat a lot of it. Yes. You have to eat 216 grams of it. Yes. Or you can bring your own pizza with you. All right. Sorry, I'm always come with their own shawarmas, their own pizzas and waffles. Okay. Anyway, the other way around. It's a bread that's not sweet, but primary component is fruit juice or other juices or other stuff and not water. So, but it doesn't taste sweet. Possible. You play around with the chemicals, you play around with the stuff inside, you can make it balanced. So let's see. He brings here the Shulchan Aruch Harav, source 19, page 269. Or milk, or other things, chama, b'shumen, b'shemen, or b'meitzim, or b'peiros, fruit juice, eggs, b'yayin and wine, or b'shar mashkin chutz m'mayim. V'afilu irav b'me'at mayim. Even if you mix it with a little bit of water, Imaroihu mishar mashkin. Mevarchin Allah barmi mezonot uvracha achat me'ein gimel. Main shalosh. You'll say that. So according to Shulchan Aruch Harav, he's learning the Ramah. Very simple. Depends what you're putting inside. The Ramah said the majority has to be something else. You're putting in something else, it's mezonot. Okay, so according to this, the bread that says it's mezonos bread, and the primary is apple juice, according to Shulchan Aruch Harav, it seems to be okay for Ashkenazim.
The problem is that they put a little bit, and they call it mezonot.
No, for Sephardim, it has to be taste.
Right. So if it's 75%, it's gotta be nikal already.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. No, doesn't have to be.
According to the Shulchan Aruch Harav.
Yeah, Shulchan Aruch Harav, this is right.
And what's the other opinions?
So let's take a look. So Mishnah Berurah, he says, tavlim me'urav behen ad shal yidei zeh yeh minaker tavlim betam yoter me'akemach. He makes a distinction. Primary, it has to be a primary component for what? So you can taste it. Okay, so here that's the Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah seems to be saying now Shulchan Aruch Harav. It doesn't matter what the primary component is. The reason why the primary component has to be there is the primary component has to change the taste. So according to Mishnah Berurah, you need two things for Ashkenazim to become mizonot. You need to have majority component, majority ingredient, and a taste. That's what Mishnah Berurah seems to be learning it. Shulchan Aruch Harav says no, we just need the primary ingredient. So what does the OU have to say? The correct halacha on mizonos roll, verse 21. Someone sent a question into the OU. I have seen sandwiches and rolls labeled mizonos roll. Is the bracha on these rolls really mizonos? So answer. As noted in the previous halacha yomit, the Shulchan Aruch rules that the bracha on baked dough made with honey, oil, mix of spices is borei min mizonot. How much spice or flavor must be added? Shulchan Aruch rules that a discernible taste is sufficient. And this is a position followed by Sephardic Jewry. In contrast, the Ramah rules of flavor must be predominant. This is a ruling following by Ashkenazic Jewry. The OU poskim, as well as many others, understand the Ramah to mean the bracha and mizon only if the final product tastes like cake and not like bread. Mizonos rolls are generally kneaded with fruit juice and water. Typically, they taste almost exactly like regular rolls. Rav Belsky, Rav Schachter Shlita, both hold it there without question Hamotzi for Ashkenazim. Even for Sephardim, the bracha may be Hamotzi since the fruit juice is often not discernible. So here you have Rav Belsky, you have Rav Schachter, who say that these mizonos rolls are not mizonos. They are Hamotzi, even for Ashkenazim. Okay. I think this is the, let's take a look at one more, page 289, halacha 21 in the Yalkut Yosef. If bread dough is kneaded with fruit juice, but its flavor is not noticeable, the proper blessing for the bread is Hamotzi mechel min haaretz. And here in the Yalkut Yosef he says, Bein l'minhag Sephardim, bein l'minhag Ashkenaz. He says it's for everybody. Okay, so he's not going with the Shulchan Aruch Harav. So those mizonos breads that taste like bread, almost according to everyone, is not mizonot. This is where I said companies should not become poskim. Should not tell you what bracha to say on the bread. Rather, they should tell you if it tastes sweet or not, and that would help a lot of people figure out what the proper bracha is on this. Okay, that's on the those halachot. What about moving on to page 273? We have like 7 minutes, so we'll see what we can do with Kaveh Suda. I don't know if we're going to go. We'll try to do it a little bit more outside. Kaveh Suda. So what we did say, if you eat 216, page 273, if you eat 216 grams, we said you make a hamotzi. Says the Shulchan Aruch, "Malchum ben shir sha'achem regelim l'kvoi alav, v'av b'shaloi savim mimenu, v'barach hamotzi u'berkat hamazon." Eat majority. You eat what other people would eat to fix a meal. You make hamotzi and berkat hamazon. Now, how much is this? The Mishnah Berurah says for eruvei techumin, right, to make an eruv, the measure of a meal the shear suda gimel or daled beitzim is either 3 or 4. Okay, 3 beitzim would be 162 grams according to the Yalkut Yosef. Each kibetza is 54 grams. The reason why we go with 4, we're going to see because the Vilna Gaon says that in order to be kibetza suda, you need a lot more, like 7, 8 kibetza. So since there's an opinion that says it's way more, so when we say 3 or 4, we choose 4. The Yalkut Yosef says, don't go into the 3 zone. Okay? Don't go into the 3 zone. If you're going to eat mezonot, you make a mezonot in it, don't get up to 100, don't go past 162 grams. Because once you get into 162 grams, 3 kibetzim may be considered kibetz suda. So now you're in a suffix zone. So either eat less than 162 or eat more than 216. But between 162 and 216, don't do. Because you're now in a suffix zone, if it's kibetz suda or not. Is it a suffix deraita? Suffix brachot. Suffix brachot. Birkat Mazon suffix deraita. So you don't get into the suffix zone. That's what he says. Anyway, the Mishnah Berurah says. Okay, the Mishnah Berurah says a number of achronim have written that the same is true as here, that the measure for fixing a meal is same like an eruv, 3 or 4 beitzim. However, a number of other achronim, including the Vilna Gaon, hold that a person should not recite birkat of Hamotzi and birkat of Mazon for less than the measure of a standard meal of a morning and evening meal, which is way more than 4 measures of a kibetza, with more than 4 kibetzas. So it would have to be a lot more. For Moshe Feinstein, and this is where comes the whole idea. He writes, if you look at the bold part, Hashir ka'achilas adam beinani b'chol medina medina she'omde. What's the kaveh suda? According to Moshe, it's what goes on and where you live. You hear it, Zion? What goes on and where you live, says Rav Moshe Feinstein. That's a kaveh suda. Yeah, according to the majority of people. So if you're a man, he goes through a man versus woman versus children versus this. It all depends on how much they're eating. If a majority kid eats, or majority adult male eats 100 grams, and that's his kaveh suda, and that's considered kaveh suda. And that's where I think people get a little bit lost in halacha of how much is kaveh suda. Is it a small amount? Is it a big amount? And what means kaveh? Again, for us, we're going to see 216 grams, and that's it. Nothing to do with you're feeling full, not feeling full. Most people eat this, most people don't eat that. It doesn't make a difference. In the Mezonot bracha, on page 275, he brings, I'm just trying to wrap it up, so I'm not going to be able to take any questions at this point. We have 4 minutes left, and I want to finish this din of kaveh suda. The poskim debate what considers a kaveh suda. So we talked about the Mishnah Berurah, which is kaveh suda 4 times a kibetza. We talked about that. The second opinion, that's like a Rav Moshe, depends on how much people usually eat, men versus women. He says over here, the Iker poskim in Ashkenaz is like Rav Moshe, that depends on what people eat to be considered kaveh seuda. And now, if you look at page 276, the Yalkut Yosef says, the Torah, what does that mean? The Hainu Shu'acha 260 gram v'yoter. It all goes according to how much you're eating. Kaveh suda is 216. That's what the Yalkut Yosef says, and that's the way we are noheg. There's a very interesting Aruch HaShulchan here. But before I go into the Aruch HaShulchan, just in order to us to get a full understanding of Kaveh Suda, the next question, which is brought on page 277, is Kaveh Suda. Does it mean I'm eating just the bread, or can I eat other things with that Suda? So there's a Magen Avraham says that you can do anything with what you're eating. And the Chidan, his Birkei Yosef says, well, I never heard of such a thing. No one ever heard of such a thing. If you're eating the bread, that's the bread. Not other things. So some want to say it must be that you're eating a relish, something that's eaten usually with bread. Then you can count it. For us, the Yalkut Yosef on page 280, again he says, 216, according to Yalkut Yosef, in order to be kaveh suda, you have to eat 216 grams of that hapat above kisnin, and not other things, whether it be a relish, whether it not be a relish, whether it be baba ganush, doesn't make a difference. It has to be the actual hapat above kisnin of 216 grams, and then you can make a hamotzi on it, and then you make a brikat hamazon afterwards. We have a minute. I want to look at the Aruch HaShulchan. The Aruch HaShulchan, he deals with the issue. He says people come to Kiddush, they make a Kiddush, and they serve a pot of baba kisnin. They serve the crackers and cakes and stuff like that, and people eat tons of them. And no one's making a hamotzi, and no one's making a brikat hamazon. And there are people, according to that side, that even if you eat other things with it, definitely they're getting to 216. But the people eating 216 grams added Kiddush, and they're not washing. So Aruch HaShulchan likes to be melamed zchut on people. So he says it's possible to make a melamed zchut on them. He says because the Gemara seems to be talking that a pat of baba kisnin is when you're eating it arai, when you're eating it like in and out, and not an actual suda. Standing, buffet, right. So Aruch HaShulchan says possibly people eat 216 grams at a Kiddush. Maybe you can go with this idea that they're not actually sitting down to a suda, and therefore it can be melamed zchut on them, and therefore it's okay. But as we see from the Yalkut Yosef, that's not really the way we discern whether it's kaveh suda or not. According to the Yalkut Yosef, it's very simple. So for us Svaradim, Pat of Kisnin is just have to remember a few things. And I think this is what I want to wrap it up with. What is a pot of baba kisnin? So either it's a topping or a filling that's sweet, or whether the dough is changed in a taste, or if it's crunchy and crispy initially. Those all get mezonot. So if you know that, you know how to now to everything you eat, whether it's mezonot or hamotzi. And the second part is kaveh suda. Kaveh suda is very simple. It's 216 grams of that item, of that actual pot of baba kisnin. If you did that, then it gets hamotzi status and a brikat hamazon. Okay.
Question.
Okay, Avram, yes.
If we're eating, let's say, mezonot, how many minutes in between can we have not to make it kaveh suda? 1 or 2 minutes pausing, so then I can continue.
So you're saying very good. You're saying in order to be kaveh suda, how fast I have to eat each kazayit?
No, usually I think I learned if
you're right.
eat,
That's what the Yalkut Yosef says.
Right.
He says you have to eat each kazayit within kadei kilos prat within 7 minutes, and you can't make a hefsek, an interruption of more than 7 minutes between each kadei kilos prat. So you would have to eat the 216 grams in a certain way. You'd have to eat 27 grams within 7 minutes, and then you can only wait 6 minutes in between, and then eat the next 27 grams in order to make kaveh suda. If you didn't do that, then you're not being kaveh suda. That's what the Yalkut Yosef writes.
That's a nice loophole.
Yes, it's definitely a loophole.
Okay.
Within a kazayit within kadei chilas pras of each other. So every kazayit has to be done eating the kadei chilas pras, and in between you can't go more than a kadei chilas pras. Not necessarily, because if you eat the 200, if you eat the let's say 150 right initially, and then you waited more than 10 minutes, more than 7 minutes, and then you eat another one, it's not connecting anymore. It's not kadei chilas pras anymore, and therefore it's not connected. As long as you continuously eating it.
Whether you eat this or that.
That's not what he says. That's not what he says. He says it has to be. I think this is page 296, 30 over here.
That's for
once someone makes a meal, probably he must eat the volume of 4 eggs from the Papa Kissin itself. I remember writing it down, but I don't know where it is right now. Here he deals with you plan to, and then you messed it up and all that. Okay. All right. He should make sure to eat the kazai within the time of Kedei Chiyas Pras, no more than 7.5 minutes. And interrupting between each kazayit, he writes in Rashi Yosef wrote that you have to read without interruption. And you can interrupt no more than 6 minutes between each one, each kazayit. Okay, so that's Kaveya Seuda. Okay, Hamotzi, we'll end up over here for today. As Hashem, we'll continue next week. B'nei neder. Toda rabah.